The stage is set, and to begin the conversation on proposed parliamentary system of government, let's take this background report by correspondent Oyeyemi Ajayi.
The parliamentary system is a part of democratic form of government in which the party or a coalition of parties with the greatest representation in the parliament forms the government, and its leader becomes prime minister or chancellor. Executive functions are exercised by members of the parliament appointed by the prime minister to the cabinet. The parties in minority serve in opposition to the majority and have the duty to challenge it regularly. The prime ministers may be removed from power whenever they lose the confidence of a majority of the ruling party or of the parliament. In Nigeria, no fewer than 60 members of the House of Representatives had proposed a bill to amend the 1999 Constitution and return the country to a parliamentary system of government, which was operated in the First Republic up till 1966. The system gave powers to regions controlled by premiers who were Ahmadu Bello in northern Nigeria between 1959 to 1966, Samuel Akintola for western Nigeria between 1960 and 1966, and Michael Okpara of eastern Nigeria between 1960 to 1966. This proposal is to replace the president with the prime minister to serve as the head of government and establish the office of the president as a ceremonial leader with the elective offices chosen from elected members of the legislature. Analysts believe merits of the parliamentary system of government cannot be undermined in bringing change into the political system of Nigeria through the idea of continuity in government. This reflects the fact that in cases of change in government, the head of state does not have to leave office. The parliamentary system of government also reduces workload with the existence of more than one executive, aside being a less expensive system of government, which has its loyalty directed to the state only, putting the executives on their toes, compelling them to ensure that the needs of the people are met. The parliamentary candidates contest for the seats in their constituencies, and after that, the party that wins the majority seat is asked to form the next government, led by the Prime Minister. Contrary to this, some have argued that the government is unstable and can be removed from office by passing a no-confidence motion in the parliament. So, the governments are often reluctant to take important and radical long-term decisions. Aside this, whenever the different party comes to power, it tries to ignore the development projects started by the previous government. So, will parliamentary system of government indeed be a substitute to the present presidential system that Nigeria operates? Also, will this proposal be allowed to see the light of the day? These are questions our guest in the studio will be answering shortly.
Thank you, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for the background report. And joining us now is one of our regulars, Ezenwa Nwagu, Chairman Partners for Electoral Reforms. Ezenwa, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Good.
Ronnie.
Also joining us is Dr. Abubakar Al-Khali, also one of our regulars. He's a public policy think tank, Nigeria. Thank you, Dr. Al-Khali, for coming on Good Morning
Thank you
Nigeria.
very much, and good morning, viewers.
All right.
Okay, and from our studio in Port Harcourt, we have been joined by Festus Oguche, constitutional lawyer. Glad to have you too on the program. Glad to have you too.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Good morning, Nigeria.
Joining us via Zoom is Honorable Kingsley Chinda, Minority Leader, House of Representatives, and lead sponsor of the Parliamentary System of Government Bill. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the program.
I'm happy to be with you.
Let me stay with you. Let's begin with you. You know, the parliamentary system of government was practiced in Nigeria's First Republic, and one of the reasons given by the time it was replaced was the lack of national integration. Why do you think that this is where we need to be now as a nation?
Firstly, let me say that our experience over the years has taught us so many things. And yes, we are a pluralist state, and there is need for cohesion. But before finally proposing this bill, we have had the privilege and opportunity of speaking with those who were involved in the First Republic, and we had first-hand information from them, not just what we read on the pages of newspaper of what went wrong and part of the problems then. And today we have tried a parliamentary, presidential system, which we claim to have patterned after the American system, but it's not exactly the same with the American system. And we have seen that it is not working for us. Yes, the argument is also there that it's the people, the individual that practice the system and not the system. But again, structure, that this system is practiced under a structure. And if that structure is not good enough for any particular persons, you will find out that you cannot get the best results. So we are proposing a homegrown, what we will call a parliamentary system, because it's akin to the parliamentary system. A homegrown system that will consider the special circumstance of Nigeria. If you allow Nigerians to exercise discretion, the attitude towards that and the attitude of persons from other climes are not exactly the same. So we need a system that will at least reduce the level of discretion that is open to public office holders and increase responsiveness to the will and the yearnings of the people. And if you look at what we're practicing today, everybody is crying that it is very expensive. Government is making efforts to cut down. But how effective has this effort been? We feel that, look, from our experience as insiders, as participants, as persons elected to represent others in this country, that all these efforts to cut down cost of governance is only playing the ostrich. We are not being sincere to ourselves. We cannot cut down the cost of governance the way we are going. We must take fundamental steps to cut down of governance, and they fall under the weight and the load of the cost of public governance. And so we feel that first, we remove the office of governor and into office of council chairman. And that's why we have proposed 3 bills. We'll start for some time, look at the pitfalls, the problems, and then continue to make consequential and then thereafter to the national level. Now, if you look at the cost of election to office of president and governor alone, you have made a lot of savings. You also look at the paraphernalia of office. Look at our situation today. We have 36 state governors and deputy governors all running long convoys and plethora of assistants and aides that also enjoy the same. Besides that, you come to the legislature, the same happens. You have 36 speakers and deputy speakers, all the same. Even at the national level, you have the Senate President, Deputy Senate President, the Speaker and Deputy Speaker, the same. The cost is too expensive. Now, outside costs, look at policy formation. A government of Nigeria today, it's difficult to pinpoint at government policies that are properly thought through all the arms of government. Take the very recent one, very simple policy issues, like moving part of the Department of CBN to Lagos. A lot of persons did not understand the rationale behind that policy. Even members of parliament that ought to. We are not carried along in that decision making. But if you have a situation where we run a parliamentary system, government policies will be known clearly between the various arms of government before it is implemented. And we talked about instability. The parliamentary system, homegrown, Nigerian-grown parliamentary system, will not lead to instability in the system. Rather, it will stabilize the system. Our major problem today is insecurity. Every week on the floor of the parliament, at least 2 motions are taken on the issues of insecurity in Nigeria today, and minute silence is observed. Thereafter, resolutions are passed to the executive, and nothing happens. If we had a prime minister with us seated in parliament, I can tell you that this issue of insecurity would have been tackled, because the prime minister knows the danger of continuing to sit there as prime minister whilst Nigerians will continue to lament and cry of insecurity. Members of parliament are affected directly. A lot of us cannot even go home in peace because of insecurity. So I think if we had a parliamentary system, these issues would have been taken care of. The economy, it's also another big problem. Where the prime minister is seated in parliament, it cannot be the same, because he has to answer to parliamentarians every week on government policies. But our system today allows us to be governed by an executive who might not even speak to Nigerians for 2, 3, 4 years. You have Eda Gabashew, as in the past administration, or Ngelali today, talking to Nigerians. And that kind of system will not help our country to grow. We need to work outside the box. We need to be a little bit more selfless in government decisions and government policies, and in looking at these issues. Let's forget about the issues of system, type of government. What we are asking for is a homegrown system of government that will consider the Nigerian character and attitude, and then come up with our own system that will help us more. And we called it parliamentary system, like I said, because when you put it into the straitjacket of systems of government that are available today, it falls more into the parliamentary system of government. We're proposing that a prime minister comes from the House of Reps and the president comes from the Senate. If you go back to the state, let the governors enure from members of assembly, and at the local government level, the council chairman will be elected amongst councillors. This system will not only save cost, it will also strengthen party ideologies and party discipline, because you now know that you need to be loyal.
Very much, Honorable Chinda, there, for giving us an insight into your proposed parliamentary system of government. Let me go to Port Harcourt, where Festus Oguche is there. Festus, you have listened to some of the reasons why Honorable Chinda is proposing this parliamentary system of government. Some of the reasons he gave is as cost of governance, and then the issue of policy formulation and instability. In your own thought, do you think Nigeria is ready to take this huge step of reverting to a parliamentary system of government at this time? Or let me put it in his own words, a homegrown parliamentary system.
Yes, thank you very much. I think Nigeria is ready to take anything so long as it brings in fresh air, politically speaking. And when the idea of the presidential system was mooted, that was at the pre-1999 Constitution Conference organized by Bolaji Akinyemi. He was then the Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Then that institute was involved in a lot of policy making, formulations and decisions. Those that were trained in America, who I regard as Americocentrists, were so loud about evolving the presidential system as a new system. And those that had Eurocentric ideologies and who were trained in Europe said we should still insist on the parliamentary system which we had in 1960 and in 1963. They gave out all their reasons, and some of them stood out. I know a lot of those Americocentrist ideologues were very strong in their positions, and a lot of them, on the other side, Eurocentric gentlemen, the likes of Dr. Joe Modu, Akin Oshutokun, Professor Alaba Ogunsawo, they made very frontal opinions, make serious suggestions about why we should stick to the parliamentary system. I know that one of the main focus of the parliamentary system is that it separates the head of state from the head of government. There's plurality of the executive, there's parliamentary character of the executive, and the responsibility of the ministers to the legislature. It calls for better responsibility because it ensures accountability and discipline. All these are possible. But then, I would say that the presidential system, much as bogus as it sounds, Chinda had stated that we did not actually copy the American system because there are so many deviations from that pattern. But we talked about a homegrown parliamentary system. If you are talking about a homegrown parliamentary system, then it has to go through processes, part of which is also, it should involve the people in formulating or defining the eccentrics of that particular constitutional document. This is very, very important, and you cannot do it outside the will of the people. And that also suggests that probably another national conference will be necessary this time. What is important is also the need to underscore the fact that we have a very flawed, a structure that is very flawed in the sense that you cannot build anything on it and expect to have a brand new system or a brand new country. No, part of the problem we have with the Constitution, its implementation, its efficacy and potency is the fact that the structure itself is very much flawed. So we cannot talk about bringing in a new constitutional system if we still have those flaws underneath the structure, the national framework, which is very, very important. And I would say that much as the presidential system has shown to us is very, very expensive. We've been spending so much money on recurrent expenditure than capital expenditure. We can reel out all the facts about these negative fallouts of the presidential system, the fact that it creates very serious oracles of power at the state and the federal level, people that turn themselves into demigods and serious power mongers get into that place and begin to think out tyrannical tendencies. We saw that very much in the Buhari administration, where virtually it appeared that it is even more autocratic than the military system. I would say that the idea is a very noble one, and we should think about it very deeply. There's no problem actually with the parliamentary system as far as I'm concerned. I think the problem that occurred that time was the provisions of Section 33 of the 1963 Constitution that allowed the governor to remove the premier, at his own whims and caprices, at his own discretion, and whether he gets the support or he does not get the support of the legislature or the House of Assembly at that time was immaterial. And somebody tinkered with that idea, and that was how the premier of the Western region was removed. It created a lot of fracas, and that was what resulted to the decimation of that system at that time. The matter went all the way to the Apex Court that time, which was the Privy Council at Degbero against Akintola. And it was decided, there was a later provision that said, well, you cannot remove the premier, the governor cannot remove the premier unless he has the support of the majority of the members, or he finds out that the premier no longer has the support of the majority of members of the legislature. There's also the issue of the native police that was becoming a little tribal. There was also the political parties that were, as at that time, more on the tribal or ethnic inclination and cleavage than on national outlook. We also had the problem of certain the diversity of our national focus and what have you. But then that system created monumental empires of development. As at that time, some of the regions were competing with leading global nations in defining the developmental outlook and pace globally. That was when we had the palm oil in the east, cocoa in the west, and in the north it was pound pyramids, and the economy was moving on well. There wasn't that much problem with corruption because the government itself is answerable to the legislature. It's part of that legislature. There's ministerial responsibility. There's collective responsibility of the executive as well. There's the collective responsibility of parliament. And these created certain strictures that I think are even superior to the doctrine of checks and balances as we have in the presidential system. To the very best of my knowledge, the vote of no confidence is more efficacious than an impeachment process. The impeachment process, as we know it now, is either to compel somebody to abide by party loyalty or to create room for God's federalism. But a vote of no confidence happens right in the House because the head of government, the Prime Minister, is also a member of Parliament. The ministers are members of Parliament, you know. And it's just as easy as that. And if it's something that is possible, I think it's a very good try.
For your opening comments, and let's now come home to the studio. Ezenwa hasn't looked too not too excited about what he's heard. But what's your take? Parliamentary system, even if it's homegrown, if there were faults in the initial one practiced in the First Republic, you know, we can touch it here and there and make it suit our own peculiar circumstances.
Well, I think what's important is that there's some thought. Chinda is thinking about solutions. How do we get out of the myriad of challenges that confront us as a people? But listening to him, I get very confused. You know, Alexander Pope was the one, and he tried to say something like that said, forms of government, let fools contest. What is best administered is best. So the arguments that have been brought as to why we have to revert back to, they all came back in the 2014 Goodluck Jonathan confab, which I was a member of. And I will tell you that these arguments were flatly defeated by the majority of Nigerian people who...
As represented.
Yes, who made... No, not even the conferees themselves, but, you know, proposals. The proposals for state creation alone were over 120.
But can we continue?
No, like I'm coming. I'm saying this. See, you are talking about people.
Yeah.
You are not, it's not about what I think in my head. Okay? The Ebonyi person was in the east, we was in that east region, east central region, right? He was there. Does he feel a sense of accommodation in what you call the eastern region of that period? Do you understand? Where does he stand now? If you want to get him back to that, do you understand what I'm saying? Is he open to it? In Benue, where people are calling for upper state, in the Kogi in the Kaba area of Kogi, where they don't feel a sense of accommodation, they are still wanting something that can be close to them. So my sense for me is that as at now, any argument that we are bringing forward, presidential system, we copied the American, we perverted it. The homegrown, we will pervert. Things are expensive as we want it to be. There's a story of a gentleman from the Jos area who was coming to it then when Kaduna was the headquarters of the northern region. He came to Sabalewa and said, look, I want, give us accommodation, you know, so that those of us who come from far, and they summed up the whole thing. It came to about 800,000 pounds. After 2 weeks, the premier replied him and said, we have much more things to do with 800 pounds than providing you accommodation. Where in the world do you build legislative quarters for people who are coming to do representation and make law? We are the ones who have made presidential system as expensive as it has become. And I think that what we need to do is the homegrown thinking should be, how are we going to, first starting from parliament, legislature, where my brother and comrade Kingsley Chinda comes from, is to first start, because the National Assembly is the keeper of the purse, is the Nigeria's first anti-corruption institution. If it wants the cost of government to go down, it will go down. So the argument about being expensive is because those institutions, even within presidential system, have been perverted. And why did you have the challenge that you had with the First Republic? It had to do with the challenges of perversion as well. Our inability to simply run things the way they are run. Look at the issue of nolle prosequi. Barrister Oguche is there. What have we done with it? Is that the way it functions in other places? Okay, we are good in perversion. So I think that this, for me, is a debate that does not, in all honesty, worth the airtime that we are devoting to it. In terms of the crisis, the kind of crisis that Nigeria faces at this time, this debate about whether we are going to parliamentary or to presidential or to homegrown or to something that we don't even know, is something that we can discuss when we come out of the myriad of challenges that we are going through, which the institutions, presidential institutions, have capacity to deal with if there is the will to do so. That will be my opener.
Okay, let's bring in Dr. Akali into the conversation now. You have listened to his thought and the other gentlemen and their argument for and against why Honorable Chinda is proposing for homegrown parliamentary system of government. What's your own take on it?
Okay, thank you very much again. I think in all of this, the most important thing is, the country itself, the unity, sovereignty, and continued corporate existence of Nigeria. I think that is the most important thing. Okay, whatever kind of system that is run, should at the end of the day preserve the sovereignty and corporate, existence of the nation. Okay, whatever we do, we must be mindful of the fact that we need to keep the country as one, together. Okay, that's what the Constitution says. So for me, I think to that extent, the parliamentary system is not good for the country. I think it will be an invitation to chaos. And permit my language, I think it's actually setting a foundation towards a possible disintegration of the country, parliamentary system. And I have my reasons for saying this. I actually think the current mistrust among the constituent units of the country does not favor a parliamentary system. You're actually moving towards this integration, towards balkanization of the nation. There is so much distrust among the constituent units now, because you see, so many of the parts are calling for secession. There are secessionists in this country today calling for secession. There are people calling for resource control. Okay, there are people that are even saying we should go back to the 1963 Constitution, which brought about the parliamentary arrangement. So the key point is that there are people who are standing by to, force a fragmentation, a disintegration of this country. And I think going this route will actually open up, the possibilities of moving in the direction of a disintegrated Nigeria. I think what brought about this debate in the first place, because I really agree with the notion that you know, there isn't even the need to go into this now, to be honest. There is need, but somebody might, some people might argue that, look, we are trying to solve the problems. That is why we brought about this idea. Well, I think what brought about this issue is the issue of resource control, I think. Okay? There are people who think, you know, each region or each unit should, you know, retain its resources, should, you know, have full control and autonomy over its resources and pay, you know, something to the center. Okay? That, I think this is one of the bases, one of the main bases. Now, I ask this question. In the event, in the highly unlikely event of a parliamentary system in this country, you now have resource control to the regions. And the regions now say, now start paying. You know, I'm sure the first month, the second, the third, they would not pay. And what you are simply saying, because I wrote on this, and in my article I actually said, parliamentary system, in the context of the present Nigeria, is actually a junior sister to this integration. Because those regions, by the time you form them, okay, they pay something, they pay the percentage this month, they pay another percentage the next month, the third month, they are not going to pay.
But it was the First Republic. They were paying the First Republic. In
the First Republic, they were paying. You see, there is a very big difference between the First Republic, even to some extent the Second Republic, and what we have today. There was patriotism in the First Republic. Okay. There is so much materialism today. Okay. There is so much individualism today. Okay.
In other words, there was value orientation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. There was nationalism. These are nationalists. And that is why you see some of the things that we use today are even those that were built by them. That was the overriding principle. Building the nation, building the regions, building people. Now we have, you know, public office holders building themselves, not the nation. This is the context of this problem. So I think, to be honest, we have to be very careful with this option we are going. It's also very difficult legally, okay, to shift, to have a transition from one form of government to another under a civilian democratic setting. It's very, very difficult. You can only have this kind of fiat under a military regime that will, you know, suspend the constitution, and we know military regime.
And that was exactly what happened in 1966. They suspended the 1960-1963 constitution, and
yeah. So that's the only way you can have it.
Yeah.
Suspend the constitution and say, okay, look, we are giving you this constitution. The constitution today, the backbone of it is the presidential system. It was framed, you know, under the presidential system. So if you are going parliamentary, you will need a new constitution. And quite honestly, I don't think Nigeria, as constituted today, has the legislative, the executive, and the judicial capacity to negotiate a seamless transition to parliamentary system. I don't think so. Okay. I think at the end of the day, we will just have a chaotic scene that will not help anybody. Now, what I think, and I actually, you know, wrote a book on this in 2014. Actually, what I think Nigeria needs is a homegrown democratic model. I don't think what Honorable Chinda was saying, homegrown parliamentary, I don't think it's homegrown. We're actually copying it.
Well, parliamentary, some will argue that a parliamentary system is a democratic system, and so if it's homegrown, you may just be, you know, aligning.
Yeah, well, you see, my homegrown idea is looking at our peculiarities in Nigeria. That was my model. Looking at peculiarities in Nigeria within the context of our special peculiarities, and, you know, forming a uniquely Nigerian democratic system.
Is it exactly the same homegrown presidential system that the former president, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, is proposing, that we should look inward and remodel our presidential system of governance in line with
something like that? And you see, I want to say this, and I think this is very important. which is that democratic ethos have no universal application. What is democracy to country A may not apply as a democracy to country B.
Of course.
And the international community has not made it a hard and fast rule that you must copy presidential, you must copy parliamentary. No, they are saying, look at your peculiarities.
Let people
decide. That is the essence of democracy.
Is it not the same peculiarities that made us not to take the American presidential system hook, line, and sinker? It was in the bid to homegrow our own presidential system that we started this perversion.
To do this one.
So the challenge, therefore, for me, will be more in terms of audit, citizen audit.
Being patriotic too.
And that's if you like. Just take, for instance, that we do a legislative audit since 1999 of all those who have represented us, and look at what they should or what they claim to have attracted to their constituencies. If we do a value for money and say, since 1999 we've been represented by this number of senators, this number of legislators, and then we look at what they have facilitated, what they are supposed to have facilitated to their constituency, Nigeria will not be where it is. We have,
if they actually did what they ought to do.
So what is the idea of this bicameralism? What is the idea of this representation? Do we have true representation? The guy who is a minister is called Minister of the Federal Republic, but he is a representative first and foremost of a state. So he goes to the presidential executive council meeting first as a representative of the state where he comes from. So there is a conversation about Ruga. Okay,
And
the livestock transformation policy that was codenamed Ruga. So what is there? He's supposed to go back to his state and discuss Ruga and say, these are the benefits for my people, these are the things it will do, but see, even if you do parliamentary system, the type that Honorable Chinda is talking about in Nigeria, the human beings, the quality of the human beings have been perverted in a way that what the military did to us, those who took over from them took it over. Let's take the simple issue of audit. You talk about that First Republic. In the federal civil service, you can't take 1 naira out. You cannot take a naira out. It will go through processes, audits, this and that and that. After it has gone through all of that, then you can go, and then it is when you are cleared by the audit. When the military came, they ambushed the audit system and started keeping money in the government houses. They packed money in and put it in the government houses. There was no process, nothing. Today, the people who took over from them are sharing 500 million, 200 million, buying cars for themselves, and you are talking about expensive system. I'm sure. The point that you need to realize is that if you keep this same kind of people in the homegrown parliamentary system, they will still share 500 million, they will still share 200 million. The system itself, they've found out how to cheat this system and subvert it. And so Dr. Alkali was talking about patriotism. Okay, so what the military did is that it broke all the systems, and the people who have taken over from them have refused to do a detour. They have continued in that way, and it has become a new system. So we need to first talk about what is this representation? What does it mean to represent people? What does it mean? What does representation mean? What does oversight mean?
I'm sure
what does lawmaking mean?
I'm sure Honorable Chinda will have something to say about that.
If we do an audit from 1999, will anybody say that the reputational baggage that the National Assembly has carried since this 1999 has helped the presidential system of government?
Okay.
Well, we'll find out.
All right. Okay. Let's call on Honorable Chinda here to react to some of the issues that have been raised here, especially the issue of citizen audits and invitation to chaos and disintegration of the country if at all we allow the parliamentary system to stay.
Let me add that, you know, the parliamentary system you propose is going to lean heavily on a parliament that, you know, your co-discussants think has not covered itself in glory when it comes to even the cutting the costs of governance, which you are championing.
Thank you very much. One thing, it's clear that we all agree that something is not right. From all the arguments, in fact, let me take from Dr. Alkali's argument, he ended up in the same thing, exactly what we are residential, but what he's talking about is that the system we run today in our country is not the best for us. That's the implication. And then if we also argue that, yes, for systems of government, let fools contend, whatever is best administered is best. Now, I'll give you a simple example. We all say, oh, we need to change the attitude of Nigerians. What is wrong with our attitude? You can where you can easily escape crime. A system where punishment and reward is weak. The same Nigerian you're talking about changing his attitude, take him to a stronger system. He doesn't need anybody to educate him. He will adjust and obey the laws and the regulations of that system. What has happened? Clearly, we must admit that what we are practicing in our country today, it's not the best for us. You have a system where the individual is stronger than the institutions, and it is not unlawful. I'll give you an example. We have had a situation in this country. We are even presenting a budget by the president. The president wanted a minister to present the budget before the parliament. It's not unlawful. Our laws allow that. And if you keep amending the same constitution that we have without tweaking the system a little bit, without making a hands-on service to the people, it will not help us. What we are proposing and what we are talking about is that we start it gradually. We're not saying that, look, you wake up tomorrow morning and you dovetail into a parliamentary system of government. No, because we know that there will be problems. Start from the local government level. Practice it and begin to see the problems and the faults. Correct it and then you move to the state level. Practice it and make consequential amendment to other laws that will help in ensuring a smooth sail of this system. I tell you that what we need, it's a hands-on service. Our brother also talked about audit of the parliamentarians. Yes, if you carry out an audit today, you will find out that value addition as against what we spend on each member of parliament is very low. The expenditure is high, not much is being attracted by these members. It is also not completely the fault of the members. It is the system that you have in place. So what do you do when you find out that, look, a parliamentarian is not adding enough value to the office? What is the punishment? What is the reward for those who are selflessly adding value? What is the reward for such persons? Our system does not have it. Whether you like it or not, if we agree that something is wrong, let us not pamper the problem. So what we are saying is that, look, think outside the box. Provide a solution. Whether you like it or not, again, I must state that if we continue with what we are practicing today, there will be an implosion. That thing that we fear most, that this country, we want it to remain as one, will visit us. Today, there is argument of resource control, you are aware. There is the issue of restructuring, you are aware. Of course, we have myriads of problems that can lead to the split of this country. What we are saying is that, look, we need to rejig our system. This system is not good enough for Nigeria. And we have dropped this as parliamentarians for discussion by Nigerians. You can tinker with it and then produce a system that is best suited for us. The level of discretion in Nigerian system is too high. And let me also give you another example. Go to the US today and allow public officers discretion. They will exercise that discretion in the interest of the populace, much more than a Nigerian executive or parliamentarian or public officer. Allow the same discretion to a Nigerian in Nigeria today. He will not exercise it in national interest. He will exercise it more in his own personal or tribal interest. So these things must be considered, and then we reduce the level of discretion that is in the system, increase the level of checks and balances. That's why we said, if you have the ministers in the House, you have parliamentarians in the House, the same cost for a minister and a parliamentarian will be split. It's not a situation where we have today what we call oversight. Of course, most often, the result is low. Even where you struggle to do the proper thing, you are 360 in the House of Reps. How many, what percentage of the 360 will want to stand straight to ensure that the right thing is done? And then what about if you go back home? What do you attract back to your people? You know, so there is need for a change of system. Let us not go with the argument that, oh, it is the individual. You need to change the individual. The system does not help those who want to do the right thing. And the best we can do for ourselves is to start a gradual change of that system. And I can assure you that if we start that, you will see the impact.
Honorable Chinda, what you are now proposing is that we should begin a gradual change of the system, that it is not actually the people that needs change, but the system needs to be rejigged. Okay, thank you very much. Now let's join Festus Oguche in our, where is he now? In Port Harcourt. In Port Harcourt. Festus, you have listened to the argument for and against this parliamentary system of government. And what do you think, or when you compare the arguments for maintaining a presidential system, do you think the argument, will stand the test of time?
No matter how we look at it, it is very well known that the system we are currently operating is very faulty in all its ramifications, in the terms of governance, in terms of allocation of power, in terms of representation, in terms of exercise of power, in terms of legislative lists, legislative powers. The fault is not ours anyway. Somebody has said it is the system, but it is not just the system alone. A whole lot of things come into play. If you look at this constitution from its entire framework and structure, you discover there are so many gaps and inadequacies that need to be filled. These gaps will stand, and in spite of any amendment, they can amend it 1,000,000 times, and it will turn out to be the same thing. I don't think this jamboree of amendments that has always been the direction of the National Assembly, can work and get this system to stand the test of time. Well, I will say that it is not perversion. Somebody said it's perversion. It's not perversion at all. It is simply that we are not very much suited to the presidential system of government, and it's all very glaring for everybody to see. Somebody also said it's resource control. It's not about resource control. And even if it is about resource control, and we can bring back the economic empires that we had in 1960 and 1963 constitutions, there's nothing wrong with it. But I want you gentlemen to take a look at the constitution of 1963 vis-a-vis that of 1999, or the amended version of it. And you see the distinctions between the two. In terms of superiority, in terms of elegance, I'll give it to the 1963 constitution. And I am very much aware that the British that brought the 1960 constitution, in which the 1963 constitution was modeled, did a lot of consultation. London School of Economics, University of Oxford University, and the rest of the Ivy League institutions in the UK contributed immensely to it. So you see the rich quality of the provisions, the extent to which it expanded the reins of governance, the extent to which it taught virtually every aspect of statecraft, including the manner of running the country, including the judicial system, including, of course, the Niger Delta issue, which occupied the whole provision of that constitution, which I think is very impressive. It's not just about fears that this country will disintegrate or maybe decimate because a particular system is in place. But I know that the human factor always play a very serious role in whatever success or failure comes into a system, that you can implant our current system to a different country and it will work, you know. But then there are systems that tend to check certain excesses. We've been seeing a lot of impunity in more recent times, such that is incomparable with the one of 1960 and 1963 Constitution. The parliamentary system has its very serious inherent inbuilt mechanism to ensure that nobody exceeds his allocated power. The Prime Minister cannot behave anyhow because he comes back to the legislature, the parliament, to tell his own story. The ministers are members of the legislature. The same thing as per the states. But a system that locates every power to the center, to one particular source, then what else do you expect than tyranny, than autocracy? That's exactly the point you are making. It's not just about sentiments. This system is not simply that it is expensive, it is simply that it cannot work. We know that ours is not simply a homogeneous society. The multifarious nature of our society is also there, even in the United States, everywhere. But you're looking at it from the intrinsic character and peculiarity of the system in which we are in. That when you have it, and a situation where you have a constitution that is imposed, a situation where you have a constitution that is not people-driven or people-oriented, and the sovereignty character, which is why I'm referring to the issue raised by the learned gentleman on my right about the quality of representation in the National Assembly. It is not about representation alone, it's about the sovereignty of the people, which resides in the people. And in spite of the fact that the current constitution that we are practicing says that sovereignty resides in the people, from whence government derives its power and authority, you see, where is the called sovereignty? If you ask any political scientist or any political economist to locate the position of the sovereignty in our system, you can't find it anywhere. You find it in Astorok. You find it in the government houses in the capital of the sub-national units in the country. So it's something that you must face frontally and admit that this system is totally not working for us and is setting us backwards. And as we proceed and continue the amendments, you see that nothing will improve in the whole scenario of our constitutional practice and our democratic tradition. Thank you.
So, Buche, thank you very much for your comments. We'll continue this conversation, but after this break. Please stay with us. All right, you're welcome back. This is still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. I'm tempted to get to Honorable Chinda. There are questions quite unanswered. And I'll put two straight. One is that there is the argument that the parliamentary system to which we look to, to skew this parliamentary system of government to the National Assembly, for instance, is a major source of wastage. That's one argument. And then the other is that change that you seek can begin from the parliament. Except there's something we don't get to know, and I don't see how you intend this homegrown solution that you are proposing. What is going to be, what are the peculiarities that will make it work for the same people, the same set of politicians, and the same Nigeria?
Well, thank you. Let me be straight with the answer. It's not going to be a wastage. First, we are elected to make laws for the good governance of Nigeria and for the peace of this country. And we have looked at our laws, and we think that one of the problems that we have is the system that we run today. And yes, you can ask, why not start from the parliament? What do you expect the parliament to do? will tell you the same story. And that's why I said that a lot of us have been playing the ostrich. We'll tell you the story of, okay, we don't want our allowance, as if that will comes to oversight and all that, but that is not what we're saying. You can't run the same system for decades, and it's getting worse by the day, and you continue to pretend that that system, yes, you need to change the attitude of the people. No, sir. What we are proposing, it's commence from the local government level. You are going to identify the problems that are inherent, because we are not saying that the parliamentary system we're proposing is a magic wand, that once you adopt that system, the entire problems of this country will be gone. No, sir. So that's why we said, let it be a gradual process. And Nigerians need to key into it. We have thrown up the discussions. We want people to contribute to it. We want ideas. We want it fine-tuned in a way that it will be best for us. And you have seen us taking our program and our lobby across this country to those who have wealth of knowledge to share with us. And we have gained a lot. We've gone to the north, we've gone to the south, we've gone to the west, we are going to the east. And so what we are proposing for Nigerians is consider something different from what we are doing. We are participants in this system. This system will not help us. No amount of amendment of the current system that we have today will take us out of the woods. Even where you have a president that is sincere, intends well for this country, but because of the baggage, you find out that along the line there will be leakages. There will be leakages. So I have even proposed a bill that will impose capital punishment on anybody that steals from public fund. But you know that such bills will not fly. Even from the populace, I'm not talking about parliamentarians, even from the populace, it will not fly. What we are facing today is that people are afraid of change. A lot of persons are comfortable with the positions they hold. And so when you talk about a parliamentary system or a change of system, they feel that they will be rooted out of their comfort zone. So my response to this is that there is need for us to attempt this new system from the local government level. Nigerians key into it. Let us get the contribution of everybody. And that's why I'm happy with this discourse. We are more interested in listening to criticisms of this system. And I've been taking notes since this program started. Assurance we are giving you is that, one, we are sincere in our intent, our vision is clear, and that this system will work for Nigeria. Let us have a local government system where councillors are elected. Those who will run us should start at home. Charity begins at home. The governor must be acceptable amongst his people at home. Run election to the state assembly. Whoever the prime minister is should be acceptable at home to his people. Run election to the parliament. And then you also find out that the quality of persons that will want to be councillors will improve. Quality of persons that will want to be in the state assembly will improve. And that will bring the kind of change you're talking about. You have more mature people, more independent-minded people who have vision for their state, running for state assembly elections. But one amongst them will be picked as the state governor. So we are not, I repeat again, we are not saying that, look, just wake up tomorrow morning and the parliamentary system imposed. We start from the local government system, make consequential amendment to several laws that are in place today. In the next 3-4 years, we go to the state level, if all is well. If it is not well at the local government level, we'll continue to make amendments and corrections until we get it right at that level. Then we'll move to the state level. We'll also it at the state level and continue to make corrections and amendments. The governor enjoys the entire powers in the state, and he could use it for or against the state. It is not healthy for us. The parliamentarians too are mere lords of parliament for the 4 years. Nobody is supervising you. Nobody is checking you. But imagine a situation where I, Kingsley Chinda, am a member of parliament, and then you're also serving as a minister accountable to the people in parliament. You would not have a situation where you have somebody who is not mentally ready or physically fit to be the president of the country. It will not happen, because if you are not, and you are offered even the seat of a prime minister, you know that every week you'll be accountable to your people, and so you cannot sit on that seat. So all I am saying is, let Nigerians discuss this. Let Nigeria.
From his submission there, at least, what I can just get from what he's saying is trying to call for another national confab, another national conference. And many stakeholders have argued that why call for another national conference if we have had one before in 2014? So let's pick that one, let's dust it, let's look at it again, and let's apply, let's look at what we can take from it. And also, some people have argued that why all this parliamentary system of government, presidential system of government, why don't we look at the issue of true federalism? So, Dr. Akali, I want you to comment on that. Why call for another national confab when we have had one before in 2014? And the stakeholders are saying, okay, let's pick the 2014 and apply it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, in the context of, the narrative that we have had over the years since 1999 in Nigeria, you could actually argue that that's where this debate is going to.
Yeah.
It's going to just committees, okay? Yes, committees or conferences, money spent, and at the end of the day, notice achieved. That's where it's going.
Yeah.
Yes. so you see, the issue is not the laws. We have too many of them. We have too many propositions. You see, we have too many policies, a lot of them, in abundance. But the problem has always been with the implementation. The issue is not with the system. It is with the implementation of the system. And you see, the narrative now, the kind of narrative the proponents are trying to put forward, that the problem is with the system. It's not entirely correct. It's not. The problem is not with the presidential system. The problem is that the presidential system has not been allowed to work in Nigeria. And I give you an example. You have an appropriation that takes about 75% for the current expenditure and just about 20% for capital expenditure. Okay? You have a very bloated size of government, which the Constitution doesn't even accept, which the Constitution didn't state. Yes, so you have what I will call an over-application of the presidential system in Nigeria. And that is why we're having this. There are even insinuations that the National Assembly actually takes about 35–40% of the national budget. And we have seen some of these debates in the last week or so. Okay, the kind of financial arguments and concerns and misapplications that have been coming out of the National Assembly, proves this fact. So the point is, the presidential system is not entirely wrong for Nigeria. And the notion that the problem is with the system, with the presidential system, is not entirely so. The presidential system has been over-applied in Nigeria. We copied this system, the presidential system, from the United States, but just one example. In the United States, there is no office of the Senate President. The Vice President is the head of Senate, or the equivalent of Senate President. But here we have a Senate President. Another example, in the presidential system, as applied in the United States, lawmakers are not entitled, do not go, into constituency projects. They don't go into constituency projects, okay? execution of projects is the prerogative of the executive, not the National Assembly. The National Assembly, the constitutional, prerogative of the National Assembly is to make laws, lawmaking, and oversight, not to execute projects.
But lawmakers don't exactly execute projects in this case. What happens?
I understand.
Is that they can raise.
I understand. What their
people need.
But I understand, which is quite right. But you see, what we are saying is, in reality, this is on paper. In reality, we know these projects at the end of the day, control. They are managed by these lawmakers. That is a fact.
Until recently, when we started seeing facilitated by. Okay.
Yeah.
It is recently that we saw that National Assembly members facilitate projects. It was because of pressure that happened. The idea of the constituency project was also perverted. I know Oguche does not like the word perversion, but it was perverted. The whole thing was perverted because the honourable members nominated the contractors, and in many cases also became the contractors themselves.
That's just what I was saying.
This is what the reality is, but that's not the point. My point would be to say that the argument for state creation, those who came to wanting states created, was that they are viable, and there are proposals for their viability. The abandonment of it and the indolence, if you permit the use of that word, of the people who eventually started manning those states, abandoned those arguments that they put forward for their viability. Tell me, Ebonyi can feed Nigeria. The whole rice belt that we are talking about is been proven by the former governor that Ebonyi can export rice. So if you have committed leadership from that part of the country, for instance, I'm just using that as an example, you see that the states are viable. If you go to Zamfara, the Arabian gum is there. Sokoto phosphate, like Nasarawa Columbine, that foreigners are mining illegally all over the place. Gold in Zamfara is part of the reason why you are having the shenanigan that is going on in that place. So what the former Deputy Senate President called the feeding bottle federalism that we are practicing, where people come here begging, all they do is you have semi-beggars, cannot be said to be because it's a presidential system. It's a perversion of it. When we didn't just start this presidential system, we saw MPN, we saw the MPP, we saw President Shegun Shagari come to party meetings and sit on the floor. When President Obasanjo came, he ambushed the party structures and started holding party meetings inside government house, inside the villa.
State house, yeah.
And the governors copied the same thing. As we speak today, Honorable Chinda should be aware that there is no local government election going on throughout the country. So the first thing that you need to do is to even start practicing local government election. Every local government election that has been conducted in this country, the party in power, whether opposition at the federal or opposition in the state, takes 99% of votes cast in those states. So these perversions have nothing to do with the presidential system. It also means that you're homegrown with the nature and complexion of the governing elite of the country. If you start your homegrown with the same human beings, when you have a parliamentary prime minister, the prime minister will the first thing he will do is to buy car for everybody, and then make sure that he gives allocation.
No opposition,
and there are no opposition, and then he will
all right.
So we know these things. So we are not saying that the thinking is wrong. His vision is very clear. His integrity we know, and the position that he holds in the National Assembly. But the more radical thing will be to have a sovereign national conference. And a sovereign national conference means the dissolution of the National Assembly.
Now, what happens to the 2014 report?
The 2014 report is already being implemented. The problem with us is that we are always in a hurry, not to even know what we have changed. A lot of things in that report has already been implemented. There are things that are remaining to be implemented. It's just like the Justice Uwais electoral reform report. So many of the recommendations have already been implemented. What was the difference between the 2014 was that it was not a sovereign national conference. You still had everything coming out from that place, taken to the National Assembly to be legislated upon some of the legislatable issues. Right. So if you dissolve this National Assembly and then you have a constituent assembly of the Nigerian people where we can debate these issues and then come back with a form of government, but with this National Assembly, with
okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Rounding up when he decided, yeah, no problem. Well,
round of your thoughts.
Yeah, you were actually.
You have just about a minute to do that.
You're talking about true federalism. I think you know, true federalism entails that, you know, power, you know, has to be domiciled with the people. Now, that's what we're having today. It's one of the problems, you know, that even in spite of this debate of parliamentary system, because the local governments have more or less been, you know, made comatose, okay, by the state governors under the so-called joint action, account, okay. Revenue meant for local governments is now domiciled with the states. The states sit on it. Yeah. So that's not true federalism. I think this is one of the areas that we need to
look at. Thank you very much. I hope we just have about 30 seconds to dash down to Festus Oguche in Port Harcourt to give us his closing remarks. Perhaps you will be more accommodating of the word corruption instead of perversion that Ezenwa has adopted.
Whether it's corruption or perversion, anything is possible as far as we are concerned here. It is the system, as a matter of fact, that drives the recklessness we are seeing in governance. It is also the people. Part of it is also the corruption which you mentioned about, and which is the hydra-headed monster that has made it virtually impossible for anything to work in this country. I would say that representation is the key to any democratic system, and if representation is to be had, then the person or persons who are to lead the government or drive the affairs of statecraft must have the test of the population at the polls, the ministers, the commissioners. You don't just wake up anyhow and come and become and get into political office and people know you. It is the system that drives this lack of implementation that my friend there in the studio is talking about. It is that particular system and the people that manage it, that rein in the kind of elections we have, the kind of squalid judicial process that exists, the type of nonchalance in governance and non-responsiveness of people in power, in authority, to the yearnings of the people. It is this systemic and deficiency or deficit, whichever, that drives people to look at governance and participating in public office through elective or appointive process as a means of becoming overnight.
Already, unfortunately, Aristo Guche, we don't have any more time to continue, but we understand the point you are trying to make, and we thank you very much, Festus Oguche, constitutional lawyer right there in Port Harcourt. Thank you for your contribution to the program. And let's also thank Honorable Kingsley Chinda. We understand that we lost the Zoom connection, but we thank him very much for his time and thoughts on Good Morning Nigeria today. And back here in the studio, Dr. Abubakar Alkali, President, Public Policy Think Tank, PTTT, Nigeria. Thank you for your time and thoughts.
Always my pleasure.
And finally, Ezenwa Nwagu, Partners for Electoral Reform, we thank you for coming on the program. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. We thank you for your time. I am Victor Azo, saying join us again tomorrow.
And I am Ademola Ade. We appreciate your company and do join us again tomorrow for another episode of the program. Enjoy the rest of your day.